What if the strongest man alive, the man who once made the earth shake under the weight of his determination, the man who carried the title of the king, with a smile as wide as his massive back, is today struggling to walk without pain? What if the same titan who once squatted 800 pounds like it was nothing, who picked up weights that even machines feared, who inspired millions with his unstoppable energy and iconic body, now fights every single day just to stand? And what if the legend the world admired, the unbeatable, unshakable, unbreakable Ronnie Coleman at 61 now sits before us with scars carved deep into his spine, metal rods holding his back together, and a life story that can make even the hardest hearts melt? This is the story that will break you, the story that will force you to look at greatness not with admiration, but with tears. Because before the trophies, before the cameras, before the fame, Ronnie Coleman was just a boy fighting the world with empty pockets, silent hunger, and a dream so big it almost destroyed him. Ronnie was born in Monroe, Louisiana, in a neighborhood where poverty wasn't a phase, it was a lifestyle. His family struggled to afford the basics, and Ronnie grew up understanding hardship before he understood anything else. He wore hand-me-down clothes, lived in a small house where money never stayed long enough, and often went to bed wondering why life was so hard on them. But instead of becoming bitter, Ronnie became humble. He didn't complain, didn't cry, didn't blame anyone. He simply learned that if he wanted something in life, he would have to work 10 times harder than everyone else. As a child, he was shy, quiet, and never the center of attention. Nobody looked at him and thought, he will be the greatest ever. And that's exactly what makes his story powerful. He wasn't born a champion, he became one. In school, Ronnie discovered sports, and football became his escape. It was the first time he tasted strength. The first time he felt like he could be more than just a poor boy from Louisiana. He pushed himself to the limit, trained longer and harder than his teammates, and eventually earned a scholarship to Grambling State University. College helped him build discipline, but even after graduating with an accounting degree, life hit him again. He couldn't find a job. Nobody hired him. Ronnie, the future king, ended up working at Domino's Pizza, delivering boxes to customers while barely earning enough to feed himself. He once revealed that he ate Domino's scraps because he didn't have money to buy real food. Imagine that, the man who would one day have the greatest physique in history once struggled to afford a single meal. Eventually, fate threw him a lifeline. He became a police officer in Arlington, Texas. It wasn't glamorous or high-paying, but it was a stable job. Ronnie loved the structure, the discipline, the simplicity of helping people. And yet, something inside him still waited for a bigger calling. That calling came from a small gym in Texas, Metroflex Gym. When Ronnie first walked into Metroflex, he didn't know his entire destiny was about to change. The gym was hot, dirty, old, and smelled like sweat soaked into metal. But it was the perfect birthplace for legends. And there, the owner, Brian Dobson, saw something in Ronnie: raw potential, untapped greatness, a body waiting to become a masterpiece. Brian offered Ronnie a free membership if he agreed to compete in bodybuilding. Ronnie wasn't sure at first. He had never imagined himself as a bodybuilder. But eventually, he said yes, not knowing this decision would create the greatest champion the sport had ever seen. From that moment, Ronnie trained like a man possessed. He treated every gym session like a battle, every rep like a promise to himself, every lift like a step toward changing his life forever. While other bodybuilders trained for hours, Ronnie trained for glory. He pushed himself until his muscles screamed, until sweat poured like rain, until he collapsed from exhaustion. But he always got back up. He didn't have fancy equipment, supplements, or nutritionists. He had Metroflex, heavy iron, and a heart filled with fire. As he continued competing, people began noticing something different about him, not just his size, but his mindset. Ronnie trained with joy. He laughed during the hardest sets, smiled while lifting impossible weights, and screamed the words that would echo through history. Lightweight baby. His passion was infectious. His strength was terrifying. His potential was endless. In 1998, everything changed. Ronnie Coleman walked onto the Mr. Olympia stage, not as a favorite, not as a star, but as an underdog. Nobody thought he could win, but when he flexed, the world stopped. His physique was unlike anything ever seen: massive, shredded, symmetrical, dense, unreal. That night, he dethroned Flex Wheeler and became Mr. Olympia. A king was born, but Ronnie wasn't done. He returned year after year, becoming bigger, stronger, freakier. His dominance was unmatched. He didn't just win, he crushed. 8 consecutive Mr. Olympia titles, a record, a reign of terror, a body that looked impossible. But while the world celebrated, Ronnie paid a heavy price. To maintain that level of muscle, Ronnie trained heavier than any human in bodybuilding history. He squatted 800 pounds for reps, deadlifted 800 pounds, benched monstrous weights, shoulder-pressed dumbbells that most men can't even lift off the rack, and every lift dug deeper into his spine. Every rep chipped away at his bones. Every workout carved pain into his future. His doctors warned him, but Ronnie ignored the warnings. Not because he was foolish, but because he was unstoppable. Bodybuilding wasn't a sport for him, it was his life. Every weight he lifted was a step away from poverty, a step toward the man he always wanted to be. The man who once lifted 800 pounds now had trouble climbing stairs. The king who once roared, "Yeah, buddy," now whispered through pain. But the most heartbreaking part? Ronnie never complained. He never cursed life. He never asked, "Why me?" Instead, he smiled. He joked. He told people he would do it all again. Because to him, greatness was worth every scar. Today, at 61, Ronnie Coleman lives with constant pain. Some days he can walk with crutches, other days he needs a wheelchair. His legs have lost size, his mobility is limited, and his spine is held together by metal. When the world sees him, people cry. They see a fallen giant. But Ronnie? He sees himself as blessed. He believes he lived the greatest life possible, that he achieved everything he dreamed of, that he inspired millions, that he became something no one ever imagined the poor boy from Louisiana could become. And that's why this story hurts. It hurts because Ronnie gave everything for us, for the sport, for his dream. And today he lives with the consequences alone. But he doesn't want your pity. He wants you to know that dreams require sacrifice, that greatness is not free, that champions are not born, they are built with pain, blood, sweat, and unbreakable spirit. Ronnie Coleman at 61 may not walk like he used to, may not lift like he used to, but his heart, his spirit, his legacy, untouched, unbroken, eternal. And yet, even with all the pain he carries today, even with the countless surgeries, metal implants, and limitations that would crush the spirit of any ordinary man, Ronnie Coleman remains a symbol of unstoppable willpower. People look at him now and see a body that has endured more damage than most soldiers. A frame held together by screws and steel rods. A back that has been opened and stitched up so many times that it looks like a road map of suffering. But Ronnie himself sees none of that. He sees victory. He sees purpose. He sees a life lived exactly the way he wanted to live it. He often says that pain is temporary, but pride is forever. And he embodies that truth more than any athlete alive. When you look at him at 61, moving slowly, carefully, supported by crutches or a wheelchair, your heart breaks, not because you pity him, but because you understand the journey he walked to reach this point, the sacrifices he made, the weight he carried, the dreams he chased until they reshaped his very bones. And yet, even in this condition, he refuses to let pain control his life. He still goes to the gym. He still lifts weights lighter than before, but heavy enough to remind the world that the king is still the king. He still smiles with that same infectious joy, still cracks jokes, still shouts, "Yeah, buddy," whenever he can, because his spirit remains untouched by suffering. That's the part most people don't understand. Ronnie Coleman is not defined by the pain he lives with. He is defined by the strength with which he faces that pain. Every morning he wakes up, feels the fire burning in his spine, and still chooses to stand, to move, to try. He has undergone more surgeries than many people can count, some costing hundreds of thousands of dollars, leaving him in debt, strapped financially. But even then, he never stopped helping others, never stopped motivating the world, never stopped giving back through appearances, speeches, videos, and training tips. Even when doctors told him he might lose mobility permanently, he simply nodded and said, "I'll still be okay." The truth is, what happened to Ronnie Coleman is not just a physical transformation, it is a brutal, heartbreaking, unbelievably inspiring reminder of what true passion looks like. He didn't get injured by accident. He wasn't careless. He wasn't reckless. He knew exactly what he was doing. He chose to give everything to bodybuilding. He chose to push his limits beyond human boundaries. He chose to live his dream with such intensity that it consumed him. And he has no regrets. Imagine living a life where you can say that with pride, no regrets. Most people grow old regretting the chances they didn't take, the dreams they let die, the fears they allowed to stop them. Ronnie grew old regretting nothing, because he chased his dream until his body could no longer contain it. That is what makes him a legend. When fans see him today struggling to walk, some feel sad, some feel shocked. Some cannot hold back tears, but Ronnie tells them not to cry, because this is the path he chose, the life he signed up for, the price he willingly paid for greatness. He knew from the beginning that champions are not created without sacrifice. And if that sacrifice demanded pieces of his spine, pieces of his health, pieces of his mobility, then so be it. He would still do it all again. That is the mindset of a man who became more than human. At 61, while others his age are retired, living quietly, Ronnie is still building, still moving, still smiling, still inspiring millions around the world who look at him not as a broken man, but as a symbol of resilience. His story has reached far beyond bodybuilding. It has touched people battling illness, depression, financial struggle, and personal demons. They see Ronnie, a man who lost so much, and yet still lives with gratitude and joy. And they learn from him that life is not about what you lose. It's about how you keep going. The saddest part of his condition is not the wheelchair or the surgeries. It's that people forget the price of greatness. They forget that legends don't rise from comfort. They rise from pain. Ronnie Coleman's life is a living example of what happens when a man refuses to quit, refuses to rest, refuses to settle for ordinary. He lived like a warrior, fought like a titan, and pushed his body so far past its limits that even today, doctors look at his x-rays and shake their heads in disbelief. The rods in his back are so big and so many that they look like part of a machine, not a human. His vertebrae are fused, his nerves damaged, his mobility restricted. But his heart, still unstoppable. Even after 12 spine surgeries, even after hip replacements, even after losing the ability to walk normally, Ronnie still trains, still laughs, still shows up for people. He still says, "Ain't nothing but a peanut," even though the world knows the weight he carries now is heavier than anything he ever lifted. And when people ask him if he regrets lifting so heavy, he looks them straight in the eye and says, "No, I loved every minute of it." That is Ronnie Coleman. That is greatness without apology. And maybe that's why his story hits so hard, because we realize we're not just watching a bodybuilder. We're watching a man who lived more intensely than most people ever will. What happened to Ronnie Coleman at 61 is tragic, yes, but it is also beautiful. It's the price of chasing a dream with everything you have. It's the cost of becoming a legend. It's the reflection of a man who gave his entire body to a sport that gave him purpose. And today, when he sits in his wheelchair or leans on his crutches, when he smiles for photos despite the pain, when he motivates others to keep going, he is still a champion. He is still the king. He is still stronger than most of us can ever imagine. Because strength is not measured by how much weight you lift. Strength is measured by how much pain you can carry while still standing tall. Ronnie Coleman at 61 is proof that the heart of a champion never ages, never weakens, never dies. And if you feel tears in your eyes when you see him today, don't cry because he's broken. Cry because he showed us what it means to be unbreakable.